Hi students, in this video I'll be going through the 2022 O-Level Additional Mathematics Paper 1 question 9. Right, so let's read the question. So the equation of a curve is y equals to x cubed minus ax squared plus bx plus 4, where a and b are constants. Show that if y is always increasing, then a squared is less than 3b. Right, so this is a question regarding increasing function. So if y is always increasing, then the curve will look something like this, right? So will look something like this. Right, so let me change the color of my marker. Right, so if we were to find the gradient of the tangent at any point on this part of the curve, right? Okay, you will notice that the gradient of tangent will always be positive, okay? So it will always be positive. Okay, because the graph is always going upwards, it's always increasing. Okay, so in this case, what we can say about the gradient of this graph would be, because the gradient is always positive, therefore if we were to find dy dx, dy dx will always be greater than 0, okay, for an increasing function. Okay, so this is basically how we are going to work on for this question. Okay, so the equation is given to you over here, so it's not difficult to differentiate. So dy dx will be equals to 3x squared minus 2ax plus b. All right. Okay, so since the graph, since y is always increasing, so since y is always increasing, okay, then dy over dx will be greater than 0. All right. So we're going to put this dy dx to be greater than 0, and then we will get an inequality. Okay, so 3x squared minus 2ax plus b is greater than 0. Okay, so at this point in time, how do we deal with this inequality? So over here, we actually have a quadratic inequality. Okay, so now you need to reframe your perspective of this question already. Okay, so now if let's say the question starts from here and we're asked to solve this quadratic inequality, right? So this is a quadratic graph. 3 is the coefficient of x squared, so it's going to be a smiley face. Okay, so what do we mean by this whole graph, right? 3x squared minus 2ax plus b is greater than 0. So in terms of a quadratic graph, it actually means that this graph, right, is always above the x-axis. It's always greater than 0. Okay, the y value of this graph, this whole graph, okay, may have a y value. Okay, it's always greater than 0. So the whole graph is above the x-axis. So this is the graph y equals to 3x squared minus 2ax plus b. Right, so this function over here is not the same as this one. Okay, so now we are reframing the question already. Let's say the question is starting from just over here, right? Then now we have a quadratic graph that is always greater than 0. Okay, so if a quadratic graph is always greater than 0, it means that it doesn't cut the x-axis, right? So if it doesn't cut the x-axis, then what can we say about the roots of the quadratic graph? Okay, so if it doesn't cut, then we can say that it has no real roots. Okay, and if it has no real roots, if a quadratic graph has no real roots, then what we can say is that the discriminant b squared minus 4ac will be less than 0. Okay, so this is the approach that we need to take to continue to solve the question. So can you see it went from a question regarding an increasing function to now it becomes a question regarding solving of a quadratic inequality, and then after that it moved on to a question about the discriminant. Okay, no real roots means the discriminant is less than 0. Right? Okay, so what we can say is that, okay, so 3x squared minus 2ax plus b is greater than 0. So this means that the curve, okay, so this means that the curve, okay, so 3x squared minus 2ax plus b is always positive. Okay, so it's always positive, means it's always above the x-axis. Okay, so if we were to solve this equation, so 3x squared minus 2ax plus b equals to 0. If we were to equate to 0 and try to find the roots, okay, we will find that it has no real roots. Okay, has no real roots. Okay, so if it has no real roots, then discriminant will be b square minus 4ac less than 0. So now we are going to extract out the b, a, and c. So the b will be actually this negative 2a over here, which is the b, okay? So negative 2a square minus 4. Okay, now the a will be this 3, and then the c will be the b, right? So this will be less than 0. Okay, so we just need to solve this one and then try to show that it's equal to, so that we get this particular expression over here. Okay, so 4a squared minus 12b less than 0. Okay, so we're almost there. Just bring the 12b to the other side, and then we just divide by 4. Okay, so we are a squared less than 3b. Okay, so we show already. Okay, so this is by no means an easy question. In fact, I would think that it's a rather difficult question. Okay, so basically, let's just recap. So y is always increasing, right? So it means that dy dx is greater than 0. So we end up with this particular quadratic inequality. Okay, so when we reach this point, then the question becomes a new question really. Now all you need to do is to solve this quadratic inequality. So we should know that if the quadratic graph is always greater than 0, means it always lies above the x-axis. Then if you try to equate it to the x-axis, whereby y is 0, and then try to solve for x, right, you should have no real roots. So if no real roots, then discriminant less than 0, then we go ahead and solve, and then we are able to show what they want us to show. Right, so this is by no means an easy question, right? Okay, you got to be strong in your concept. So hopefully, after you view this video, you understand the question better, and then you remember how to solve it. All right. Okay, so let's look at part B of the question. Okay, so in the case where a equals to 8 and b equals to 10, find the x-coordinate of each of the 3 points at which the curve intersects the x-axis. Okay, so while doing A math, if you find that part A is very difficult, okay, move on to the next part B. Okay, sometimes or most times I would say part A and part B may not be related. Okay, so although you can't do part A, but you can still do part B. Okay, so in the case where A equals to 8 and B equals to 10, so we are making use of the original equation, which is y equals to x cubed minus ax squared plus bx plus 4, right? So now what we have is that a is 8, right? So we have negative 8 x squared, b is 10, so we have 10x plus 4. Okay, find the x-coordinate of each of the 3 points at which the curve intersects the x-axis. So at the x-axis, what can we say about the y-coordinate of the 3 points? So any point on the x-axis, the y-coordinate is equal to 0, right? So basically what they want us to do is just to equate this whole thing, replace the y with 0, okay, then we get a cubic equation, and then all we need to do is solve that cubic equation to get the 3 values of x, all right? So now we have at the x-axis, okay, y will be equal to 0, so equate the whole thing to 0. Okay, so do you recall how we can solve a cubic equation? So now this becomes a question on solving cubic equation. So to solve a cubic equation, we always need to factorize the whole cubic equation first, right? Okay, so this is the time for you to recap how you can factorize a cubic equation. So we'll let fx be equals to the cubic equation. Okay, fx equals to the cubic equation. Okay, then basically what we want to do is we want to find one of the factors first. Okay, to start off factorizing this whole thing. Okay, we need to factorize the whole thing. Okay, so this part you need to put in different numbers. So usually I'll try f1, f negative 1, f2, f negative 2. Okay, you don't have to write out all the steps. You can just key inside your calculator and see which one will give you 0. Okay, so in this case, if you go and try, f2 will give you 0. Okay, so 2 cubed minus 8 2 square plus 10 times 2 plus 4. Okay, so end up with 8 minus 32 plus 20 plus 4. Okay, so this will give you 0. So f2 is 0. So since f2 is 0, then x minus 2, right? 2 equals to 0. X minus 2 is a factor of fx. Okay, x minus 2 is a factor of fx. Okay, so now that we know one of the factor already, x minus 2, right? We can then factorize the whole thing. Okay, so the first part, we just have to use some observation. Remember, we are trying to factorize this, right? So you need to ask yourself, eventually we started with x cubed. Over here we have x cubed, right? So this has to be x squared, because x squared times x will give you x cubed. The only one that is difficult to find is this center term, okay, bx. Okay, but the last term here at the back is also easy to find, because here is -2, here is +4. Okay, so this has to be -2 also, because -2 times -2 then will give you the +4 over here. Okay, so now to find b, usually what we do is we can equate the coefficient of either x or x squared. Okay, so let's equate coefficients of x squared, equating coefficient of x squared. Okay, so the coefficient of x squared in the original equation, original expression is -8. So -8. Then we just need to extract out the x squared coefficient from this expansion over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so which one times which one will give you x squared? So this one times this one, right? Okay, x times bx will give you bx squared. So b is the coefficient of x squared. The next one is -2 times x squared. So -2. Okay, so b minus 2 is equals to -8. So b will be equals to -6. Okay, so therefore fx equals to x minus 2 x squared minus 6x minus 2. Okay, so in other words, we have, if you try to factorize this, you notice that you can't factorize. If you can't factorize, it's okay. You can just solve it using the quadratic equation, all right? So what we have now is x minus 2 x squared minus 6x minus 2 equals to 0. Okay, because remember what we want to solve is this. Okay, so from this step to here, what we are trying to do is we just want to factorize this before we solve it. Okay. Okay, so from here we will get either x minus 2 is 0 or x squared. Okay, from here you get x equals to 2, or x squared minus 6x minus 2 equals to 0. Okay, so from here you can just use the quadratic equation. But actually for a question like this, which is just 4 marks, you can directly just use your calculator to get the two values of x. So from here you get 6.32, okay, to 368, or one more value will be x equals to -0.317, okay, also to 368. Okay, so these are the three values of x, okay, which they want us to find, right? Find the x coordinate. They only want x coordinate, so we just need to find the x value. Right, so this question, the first part a bit difficult, okay, because it requires a good conceptual understanding, okay, of more than one topic, okay, increasing function, and then after that, solving quadratic inequalities, and then after that also involving the discriminant. Okay, but the last part B, okay, it's actually not too difficult. It's just actually just an indirect way of asking you to solve a cubic equation. Okay, so I'll just show you the solution. Okay, using Desmos. Okay, so I'm just going to go over to Desmos. Let me share over here. Okay, so you can see the three values that we got. -0.317. Okay, is where this particular graph, cubic graph, right, cuts the x-axis. Then another one is 20, right? We got x equals to 2 as one of the answer. And then the last one is 6.32, so 6.317. Okay, so basically this is how the cubic graph will look like. Okay, it actually has two turning points. Okay. Okay, typically if the function is degree 3, then you will have two turning points. Okay, if it's degree 2, it's just a quadratic one turning point. Alright, so this is how it works.